Are you looking to work in finance or accounting when you graduate from college? Do you already have a job and do you want to get into finance or accounting? The good news is there's a lot of demand for highly skilled accounting and finance professionals, and there's very likely a position for you. Let's jump into what the jobs entail and how much you can make. So if you want to work in finance, first let's start with the education. Now, for the most part, in your undergraduate career, you need to major in either finance or accounting. If your school doesn't have a finance or accounting concentration or a degree, you want to start with something like economics or business. And that's mainly so that you get exposed to the critical topics of accounting, financial analysis, investments, stock markets, bond markets, loan markets, so you can really understand what you're getting into and just start to dip your toes into the world of finance and accounting. Now, some of the more technical skills, once again, include accounting. You need to understand how financial statements work, regardless of the industry you're going into. It doesn't matter if you want to pursue a career in bookkeeping or investment banking, private equity, or hedge funds. You need to learn how accounting works, financial modeling, which is primarily forecasting the future performance of a business or an asset. You need to know how businesses are financed, what types of capital different types and industries of businesses have to finance their growth, to fund their growth. It'd be very helpful if you learn about mergers and acquisitions, how businesses are bought and sold and integrated. You should learn a little bit about taxes, the different entity structures like LLCs and corporations, and how taxes impact cash flows in your financial forecast. It's also helpful for you to learn about private equity and hedge funds and stock markets and private and public company valuation and research reports. If you want to get a holistic education, much of this information can be found either in your textbooks, but more likely online. Search YouTube. There are plenty of paid, rather reasonably priced finance and accounting training companies out there where you can learn about accounting, financial modeling, taxes, M&A, IPOs, and all that. So if you are already working and you have some money that you can invest in yourself, I'd recommend you start learning about accounting, financial modeling, mergers and acquisitions, and kind of anything in that finance world. That will help you if you're going to be interviewing for new positions. It'll help you get smarter, more confident in all the things you'll be hopefully working on, and it'll make you a better interviewer as well. So you need to learn these skills. Now, you're going to learn most of the critical skills on the job, especially if you haven't had a great internship in your undergrad or if you haven't been working in the industry already. You're going to get a lot of the skills. You're going to pick those up on the job. But again, there's a lot of things you can be doing in your spare time. It's rather unacceptable for you to say you want to work in accounting or finance if you don't know a balance sheet, income statement, cash flow, and how they all flow together. It's rather unacceptable if you don't know how companies are valued. And it's very unacceptable if you don't know the difference between mergers and acquisitions, buying a company, selling a company, merging a company, or taking it public. So you need to learn at least the basics, which again, you can learn online. Now, how much can you make working in finance or accounting? Well, if you go to an investment bank in any major market, if you go to a public accounting firm, a top 10, 25 firm even, or even if you go and work for internal finance department at a Google or a Facebook or Apple or any rather large company. For the most part, you're making $50,000 or $60,000 as a base salary in a rather major market if you work in public accounting, investment banking, any sort of advisory firm, or in a finance department in most cases. And then you can really go up from there. And what I mean is there are a few careers where if you work a couple of years in investment banking in, let's say, New York City or a major market on either coast, there are a few careers where you can be making $100,000, $150,000, $200,000 a year just a few years out of college. And that's investment banking and certain asset managers like hedge funds and maybe private equity if you can break in that early in your career. There are a few careers where you can make $250,000, $500,000 by age 25 or 26. A few careers where you can even make $1 million in your 20s and certainly in your 30s and almost definitely in your 40s if you are really a high performer at a major investment bank, even a public accounting firm, consulting firm, or buy-side asset or investment manager. Few jobs that actually provide that level of income. And for the most part, it's because you are influencing financial transactions that have an immediate way to measure the value that you're bringing. If you're helping a company raise $100 million, you've brought $100 million in value to that company, and you're going to get paid, at least your employer will get paid a lot of money to do that. It's very clear and it's very measurable how much value you're bringing. If you are performing accounting services, you're charging by the hour if you're working for a public accounting firm. It's very clear the value that you're charging to the client. It's very clear how much value your work is bringing to your employer. And so there are a few jobs other than finance and services around finance, like accounting and investment management. There are a few other careers where the actual dollar value of the value you're bringing is immediately measurable. And so that's why if you're in an industry that produces lots of financial value, you're going to make a lot of money. And the more you progress and have an influence over how much money you are earning for your employer or yourself if you're self-employed, the more money you stand to make. And that's what the really cool thing is about financial services. So in the end, your options are rather unlimited, whether you want to work in investment banking or another industry or public accounting, or you want to be self-employed. No matter what, if you have the foundations of a good education, great on-the-job skills, and performance of earning money for your employer and influencing financial transactions, you have rather unlimited options in your career. It's not an easy job. You're going to work a lot if you want to be a top-performing investment banker or partner in an accounting firm or CFO. 40 hours, you're probably never going to see a 40-hour work week. It's more like 50, 60, 70, 80, 100, 120 if you work for a big firm. That's hours per week, guys. So if you want to be making this kind of money, just know that you will be working very, very hard, long hours, stressful environments at times. But as long as you work for a good firm with good people and you continue to grow your skill sets and your income, I think that's the best you can ask for. So the top 4 career paths. Let's start with investment banking. So if you want to work in investment banking, you're going to work for an investment banking firm. Some of them are commercial banks. Some of them are called boutique advisory firms. Bank of America, Citi and JP Morgan Chase have physical retail banking. You can go and open an account and get cash out, but they also have investment banking divisions. So those are very large companies that offer a number of different services, including retail banking. That's probably why you know about them. But there are also many other advisory firms that are, in quotes, called investment banks, but they don't actually offer retail banking. It's a very different service. M&A firms or investment banks can be 1 or 2 person companies in New York City or in a city you've never heard of offering investment banking services, or again, they can be 100,000 employee multinational companies like Citi and JP Morgan and all those other companies. But in the end, an investment banking career is going to come down to one of a few different services, and that is mergers and acquisitions, that is capital raising, that is capital markets, debt or equity, helping companies go public and raise capital. Once they have gone public, you can work in sales and trading, where you're selling new products for your company, or you're actually trading stocks, bonds, and other securities for your clients or for your employer's own benefit with their own money. You can be working in corporate banking, and there's a number of different support services as well. But for the most part, if you want to be working in investment banking in a front office career path, you're going to be starting as either an analyst if you're coming out of an undergraduate program, or if you've been working there a few years, or you come out of an MBA program, you'll probably be starting at the associate level. And what you want to be doing is working your way up. If you enjoy your career and you continue making money and performing and doing well, you can work your way up to vice president or director or managing director. And if you're with a smaller firm, you might become a managing partner, have the ability to buy into the equity of the firm. But in the end, investment bankers help to buy companies, sell companies, execute capital transactions for companies. They might do some trading and some sales of other products. They might be restructuring. There's a number of different services that investment banks offer. But M&A, capital raising, taking companies public, restructuring them are the big ones. And so that is investment banking. Now, you're going to be working really hard in investment banking. I know when I worked for a small firm that had about 25 staff in total, including managing directors, I was working 80 to 90 hours in a standard work week. And some weeks we'd be working till 1 or 2 or 3 a.m. And a couple nights a year, I would simply not sleep. I would stay at the office. I would work there all night on a pitch deck or a financial model, preparing for a presentation we had the next day. And then I would have nothing more than the time to go home and grab something to eat at like 7 a.m., take a shower, change my clothes, come on back and start the workday again. So investment banking is known for long hours, hard-working conditions, but in the end, you're going to learn so much in your 2 or 3 years working in investment banking right out of college that value, that skill that it brings to you is extremely valuable. It's invaluable, in fact. The skills I learned, financial modeling, analyzing financial statements, writing information memorandum, crafting transactions, and finding buyers and helping deals get done, even when I was 24, 25 years old. But the skills I picked up now have carried forward to me owning my own business as a CFO, doing M&A work, and other advisory work as well. So I can tell you that investment banking, great career path, even if you do it for just a few years. The next career path is what I would call corporate finance, and that's working as the internal finance and accounting team at a company, not necessarily an investment bank, more so an operating company. Think of Google or Apple or the small business down the street or a big business down the street. Corporate finance is primarily working as the internal finance and accounting team. And that's where you will be executing accounting transactions, sending bills, receiving bills, invoicing, working with your customers to get paid and pay your vendors. Primarily working in the financial operations of a regular old company. And that's, once again, that's typically bookkeeping, it's accounting, there's some tax, there's treasury or money management, financial planning and analysis, FP&A, there's managing the firm's money, and there could be some elements of some investment banking that sneaks into a private or public company like mergers and acquisitions or capital raising. But for the most part, the corporate structure is the CFO is at the top. Then you have controllers, directors of finance who lead financial planning, who lead accounting. You have treasury management if you have a lot of cash and you need a specialized position to manage the firm's money. You might have corporate development or business development, which could be mergers and acquisitions. You have accountants, you have bookkeepers, you have clerks doing accounts payable, accounts receivable. You are running the money for a company. And corporate finance, once again, can technically be a small business. You're doing the bookkeeping, the accounting, and it can be all the way up to the biggest companies in the world that all have in-house corporate financial and accounting professionals. So that is what corporate finance in this example is. The next one is asset management, otherwise known as the buy side. And that is where you'll be working for a hedge fund, a private equity fund, even a venture capital firm, a mutual fund, a real estate fund, a REIT, any institution that invests the money of typically its clients is what I would call the asset management or the buy side. That's a very well-known term. So when you work on the buy side, you are deploying capital to invest in other companies. Private equity, by definition, you're buying or investing into private companies, or you're taking public companies private by buying them out, fixing them, and then reselling them or holding on to them for a while. And private equity firms buy companies or invest in companies, fix them, improve their cash flows, and they sell them for a profit. Hedge funds have a number of different strategies, but they're usually buying stocks in public and sometimes private companies. Foreign exchange, they might be buying debt. They all have a bunch of different strategies, as do private equity firms as well. But you're buying companies or securities or parts of companies or other assets, typically using the funds of your clients or your investors. And real estate funds, venture capital firms, they all kind of do the same thing. So in that sense, think of it, you are no longer exclusively advising a company on a transaction as you would be doing in investment banking. You're not working as the in-house accounting or finance department as you would be in corporate finance, but you are responsible for investing a pool, millions if not billions of dollars of other people's money, investing it into public and private companies and all sorts of other securities and assets to generate a return based on the product or the offering that your firm or fund has guaranteed to its investors. So once again, that's the buy side, and you'll be starting off as either an associate at a private equity firm. They have similar career paths to investment banking, where you're an associate, then a vice president, and maybe a principal, director, managing director, partner. Hedge funds have a number of different positions. I would argue they're not as clearly defined, since hedge funds are quite a bit different for the most part than private equity firms, but you can be an analyst, you can be in research, you can be in sales, you can be in capital raising in a hedge fund. In venture capital, very similar, as it is a subset of private equity. You might start off as an associate or a vice president. You might have sold a company and they invite you to come in and advise or be a partner in that firm for that fund. There are a number of different ways you can get into asset management. But in the end, it still takes thorough education, a quality education, and you need to have the skill sets of knowing finance and accounting in most aspects in order to succeed and have any chance of getting into asset management. Now, one more thing, if you want to get into the buy side, many young professionals start off in investment banking, and then once they graduate from their 2 or 3 year investment banking program, they might go straight over to a hedge fund or a private equity fund. Or they might go get an MBA and then get recruited into a private equity firm or a venture capital firm. So many times the best lateral move into buy side is to leave the sell side, which is investment banking, and move directly into a position before or after your MBA program. But in the end, you can basically start your career in any of these 3 paths. You can move in between any of these 3 paths, and you can succeed in any of these 3 paths, really regardless of where you start, as long as you have the skills and experience, and many times the network and the education to get into the next phase of your career. And then lastly is accounting and advisory, and I would call this public accounting. And that's KPMG, PwC, Ernst & Young, Deloitte, and any of the top 100, 200 firms out there are generally called the biggest public accounting firms in the world, and the big 4 being quite literally the top 4 firms. This is where I started my career as an auditor for a top 4 or big 4 accounting firm in Connecticut and in the New York City office. So I started off as an audit associate, worked my way up to senior audit associate, where I was working on a couple of different audits of hedge funds and private equity funds at a time. And I had 1 or 2 associates underneath me as well. And the way you progress is up to manager, where you have several senior associates and several associates who help you with your audits. And then you work your way up to senior manager, and then either director, managing director, or eventually partner in public accounting firms. So I started there. I would say that the skills I learned were important for sure. We were auditing, we were checking the work of the corporate finance teams that prepared financial statements. That's what an audit is. And there are now a number of different ways you could go in public accounting. You can go into tax preparation advisory. You could go into transaction advisory, where you're helping companies analyze companies they're going to be buying or divisions they will be selling. And you'll be working with the investment bankers. You could work in client accounting services, which is basically outsourced accounting. That's becoming huge right now in public accounting. But for the most part, public accounting firms are known for audit and tax work, and they are now adding a lot more outsourced accounting and consulting work as well. Here are the 4 major career paths in finance and accounting. If you have any doubts, the best places to start are working for high value, very well known professional services firms. In accounting, the top 4 or big 4, you can't really go wrong if you think you want to be working in finance in some way, shape, or form. You want to work your way over to maybe being a controller or a CFO someday in the corporate finance department. Working for a public accounting firm is a great place to start because of the skills and the network you're going to build in your first 5 or 10 years. If you want to work in investment banking, doing M&A, taking companies public, raising capital, you want to try to get into investment banking. And the bigger and more well-known the firm, the bigger deals you'll be working on, and in theory, the better career path opportunities you're going to have. But don't discount the value of working for a small 20 or 30-person M&A firm. Those firms make a lot of money. They can help you develop into a professional. And there's nothing wrong with working your way through the boutique investment banking world and becoming a partner at a firm in 15 or 20 years. I've had several friends who've done that, and they do very, very well. They're 35 years old, and they're managing directors working on $100 million deals, $200 million deals themselves. And of course, you could always work in finance for a company, a big company, a small company. And you could always, again, consider getting into the buy side, where you'll be managing other people's money through investing in private or public companies and other securities as well. So in summary, get your education, do really well, get an internship if you're an undergrad, If you've already graduated, try to get into the finance department of the company you work for, and then try to get into an advisory firm of some sort if you think you want to accelerate your career and work for that type of company. Leave your comments below and don't forget to subscribe.